she's so fine. Hell of a blows my mind. Hell of a lights my day.
What's good, guys? This story is coming out of Detroit, Michigan. Actually, I just kind of stumbled on it and was so blown away by it that I had to bring it to the channel. Now, I'm going to tell a story about a police officer from Detroit. Goes by the name of Sergeant Stephen Kue. If you have not heard of Sergeant Stephen Kue, you are in for a real treat. He has been the subject of at least 85 civilian complaints since 2009. He has been sued at least 8 times throughout his career. And what has happened is, a news station out of Detroit, Michigan, 7 Action News, actually was doing an investigation regarding Detroit police officers when they themselves stumbled upon Sergeant Stephen Kue. They did an investigative report on him, and it blew their ever-loving mind. I'm going to go ahead and play their first investigative report, and then we'll come back and talk about the second part, because there is more, unfortunately.
Being myself an African American, I don't put much stock into the police force anymore.
There was a time when Jay Brown dreamt of becoming a Detroit cop, but that changed the day he came face to face with one.
I started opening my door to step out of my vehicle, and that's when the cop car came blazing up on me.
In broad daylight in September of 2015, Brown was pulling up to a rental property he helped manage near Fenkel and Greenfield when he says Officer Stephen Kue pulled up to him.
He told me not to move, asked me where the drugs are. Are there drugs in my vehicle? Are there drugs in the house that I'm approaching? What am I doing here? And I said, no, sir, I do not know what's going on. I'm just here to check on some rental property.
Nearly the whole time, he said Kue's gun was trained on his chest.
Still holding a gun on you after 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and I'm asking you, pleading with you, can you please lower your weapon?
He said Kue used profanity and was demeaning, that he searched his vehicle but found no drugs or stolen weapons. And before Kue left, according to the complaint, he wrote him a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt and then said this.
He just said, he's just another stupid
Do you have any doubt at all that he used the N-word?
I have no doubt in my mind that he used the N-word. If you feel that strongly about the color of my skin, you probably shouldn't be an officer in the city of Detroit.
Jay filed a citizen's complaint against Officer Kue, seen here on Facebook, that included allegations he used racist language and unnecessary force. Kue denied both. It was hardly the first time he'd been accused. The average uniformed officer in Detroit has received just over 8 citizen complaints, according to DPD data. Some go their entire career without receiving one. But Stephen Kue, in his 12 years on the force, has received 85. We could not find any officer who's amassed that many that quickly. And for Kue, virtually every complaint against him where race is listed is lodged by a person of color.
It's somewhat of a concerning pattern, simply because you would probably want to see a mix of different races that we're talking about.
They rolled the window down and they asked us, do we have any guns or drugs on us?
DeAndre Reed and his brother were standing outside on the street where they live when Officer Kue and his partner pulled up.
We said no. They told us to lift up our shirts and do a complete circle so they could see our waistband. We complied.
He said Kue handcuffed him, searched him, then saw that DeAndre had an outstanding traffic warrant. It was then, according to the complaint, that Kue said this.
Thank my dumb brother that I'm going to jail.
He used that word.
Yes. He said it like that's something that he always says. He was very confident in saying it.
And Reed's neighbor was a witness.
And he was like, this is because of your brother. And I was like, whoa, man, hold on, wait a minute.
Reed was jailed and then released. After he filed a complaint against Kue with the city's Office of Chief Investigator. Reed and 3 witnesses said Kue used the N-word. The only person who didn't was Kue. The complaint was sustained, but Kue appealed, and with no reason documented, his commanding officer later dismissed the charge. Even today, DPD couldn't tell us why.
We take it very seriously, and we have disciplined members of the department strenuously when using that type of language, especially with citizens.
Not him, though.
Not in 2015, apparently. However, I can't state with confidence what occurred at that hearing when he appealed it.
Chris Gravlin is DPD's Director of Professional Standards. He joined the department in 2019 and said until he arrived, sustained complaints against officers were regularly dismissed without a reason documented. He says since Kue joined the force, he's been flagged at least 12 times when civilian complaints pop up and counseled by a superior.
For you to say stuff like that, you just know that your best intentions is not to protect people like me. You don't like people like me.
More alarming than the number of complaints against Kue is how consistent many of them are. He has been accused repeatedly by people of color of harassing them, of using the same demeaning language, and at least 8 times of using or threatening to use excessive force.
He a gangster with a badge. I'm 38 years old. I ain't never seen no evil like that.
Corey Collins said he was leaving his grandmother's house when Kue and his partner pulled up.
They asked me, can they search me? I said no. I haven't did nothing, you know.
According to Collins' complaint, the two men traded insults before Kue cuffed him and then said,
My trigger finger is itching. I dare you to move. I dare you to move.
What does that mean to you?
Blow my head off.
Collins was later released, not charged with anything. He filed a complaint against Kue alleging he threatened his life. Kue denied making any threats. The complaint was not sustained.
I never had no police threaten my life. He threatened my life.
A finding of not sustained doesn't mean the allegation didn't happen, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove it either way. It's the most common outcome for citizen complaints, and it's the same outcome Jay Brown received when he said Kue called him the N-word and used excessive force.
They pay no attention to any of this officer's patterns of practice, despite the remarkable similarity between all of these people's complaints.
Julie Hurwitz is a civil rights attorney currently suing Kue in federal court on behalf of a Detroit man Kue and his partners arrested. She has reviewed his lengthy list of citizen complaints dating back more than a decade.
What the heck is going on here? Why is this man still a police officer?
In 2018, Kue faced his harshest punishment yet, following his role in a drug raid where a dog was shot and killed. When Internal Affairs investigated, Kue said he never fired at the dog, but ballistics later found a bullet casing from his gun. When confronted, he changed his story and told investigators he forgot.
How does an officer say with a straight face that they forgot shooting their gun?
That is what we want to be getting to at the bottom of any investigation.
Kue and other officers were deemed untruthful. The entire drug case was dismissed, and the disciplinary sergeant recommended Kue be terminated. But instead of doling out any punishment at all, his commanding officer dismissed the entire case for timeliness, saying it had dragged on for too long.
Now I'd like to make a motion to approve the promotions to the rank of sergeant.
Just 3 months later, after a recommendation to fire him,
Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
Stephen Kue was promoted from officer to sergeant. When I reached him by phone this month, he declined comment for this report. Today, as a result of this story, DPD says they're considering reassigning him.
Based upon your questions, Interim Chief White is aware of and taking a look at all of his options right now with Sergeant Kue and how best to utilize him, given some of the things that you've raised in this report.
Those already familiar with Kue wonder why it didn't happen much sooner.
Should he be a cop today?
Absolutely not. No. He should not be a Detroit police officer.
He should not be an officer of any police department.
We did reach out to the Detroit Police Officers Association and the Lieutenants and Sergeants Association, which have both represented Sergeant Kue throughout his career. Neither returned our call. I'm Ross Jones, 7 Action News.
What's interesting about what 7 Action News did is it opened the eyes of the police department. They had no idea. And it's because people kept burying it and burying it and burying it. So Sergeant Stephen Kue just kept flying under the radar. Hard to believe, but this investigation that 7 Action News did really put a spin on things. So the chief of police was like, hold up. We need to check this out. They had been called on the carpet, and they did a follow-up. And I'm going to go ahead and play the follow-up to this story.
Seems to be a frequent flyer.
Attorney David Robinson is talking about Sergeant Stephen Kue. As we reported last week, the 12-year veteran of the Detroit Police Department has amassed more complaints against him than almost any other officer on the force.
He a gangster with a badge.
I've been called by him. I've been called a by him.
In his 12 years with the department, Kue has been among its most sued officers too, amassing at least 8 lawsuits filed against him, costing taxpayers to defend and often settle. The cases run the gamut, from alleged assault and battery to deprivation of civil rights to gross negligence. In each of the lawsuits, Kue is just one of several DPD officers named.
He was trying to antagonize me.
In October 2016, Terry Parnell was at his mother's home when Kue and his partner showed up in the front yard. Parnell said he had a legally purchased and registered handgun, and when the officers arrived, he took it out and placed it on the front porch, and they took him to the ground.
Tried to give them my paperwork. They didn't want to receive it. Handcuffed me, took me in, booked me. A citizen can have a gun on their own private property.
Parnell sued DPD for wrongful arrest. He settled the case and a separate lawsuit against the department where Kue was not a defendant for $375,000. The city admitted no wrongdoing.
Their job is to protect and serve, not abuse.
Lisa Ingram and her family say they were in their driveway when Officer Kue and his partners arrived to conduct a raid on their neighbor's home.
So you had nothing to do with the raid?
No.
You just lived next to the raid?
Right.
Still, they say they were handcuffed and detained as if they were the target.
They had guns to our head, tell us to get on the ground, shut the up. We ain't, got no right to talk, any of that.
The family sued. The city settled, again admitting no wrongdoing for $130,000. To date, the city has paid out more than $800,000 in cases where Kue was a defendant.
And they jumped out cussing as people took off running.
And today, the city is defending a lawsuit filed by Mark Gaddis. On the night of July 21st, 2017, he and members of his family were gathering out on the front lawn of his aunt's home in Detroit when a dark car pulled up.
They really just hurt. And instantly, a few people started running. So instantly, my reaction was to run. So running, I heard somebody say, I'm gonna shoot you. I'm gonna shoot you. So I started running fast then.
The men were cops, including Officer Kue, but Gaddis said that wasn't clear at first. It was dark. They were in a semi-marked DPD vehicle, and their headlights were off. They briefly apprehended Gaddis, according to the complaint, kicking him and beating him before Gaddis broke free. At that point, he was shot twice, once in the buttocks and again in the back of his ankle. Officers said Gaddis had a gun in his hand and tried to use it. He was taken to the hospital in temporary serious condition.
I woke up in the room. They just kept trying to make me say I had a gun. And just trying to force me to say, And that's what happened that night,
Gaddis would be charged with 11 felonies, including assaulting a police officer.
Did you have a gun that night?
No, sir.
Detroit police investigated the shooting, ruling it justified. During trial, multiple officers said they saw Gaddis with a firearm, and Kue said he raised it. But 2 witnesses in the neighborhood said just the opposite, that Gaddis had no weapon. One even said his hands were wide open and empty as he ran away from officers. When forensics tested the gun that police said Gaddis handled, it couldn't conclusively match DNA found on the gun to him. He faced 11 felonies. A jury acquitted him of all of them. Today, Gaddis is suing the officers and DPD.
Every eyewitness testified, stated unequivocally He had his hands in the air. They didn't see a gun. There was nothing in his hand.
In federal court today, DPD stands by its officers. In a motion to have the case tossed, attorneys wrote, Gaddis's active resistance to the officers' attempt to detain him, the blading of his body and pointing a weapon, or what was perceived to be pointing of a weapon at officers, and the recovery of a handgun in the vicinity of where Mr. Gaddis fell, further established the requisite probable cause for his arrest and prosecution. We reached out to Sergeant Kue for comment on the lawsuits against him. He did not respond to our calls or texts.
It's like a gang in itself. I'm more scared of them than I am of actual any gangs that's out there in Detroit. That's what I'm scared of.
Perhaps the most alarming thing about all the lawsuits against Sergeant Kue is that they appear to have been a mystery to Detroit police. His internal employee profile, intended to track officer performance, doesn't show that he's ever been sued. Not once.
He has been sued 8 times, and none of them are in this profile. Does that trouble you at all?
Yes, I mean, our mass database should be accurate in terms of number of lawsuits, yes.
How that happened is being investigated today, and as a result of our story, Interim Chief James White has taken Kue off the street and is personally reviewing all of the 85 complaints against him and why some were dismissed.
I am concerned, and I'm absolutely disappointed in some of the findings.
A DPD spokesman declined comment on the Mark Gaddis case as it is still pending in federal court. I'm Ross Jones, 7 Action News.
Interim Chief James White said in his statement, "The Detroit Police Department is deeply troubled and disappointed by the perceived pattern of conduct and behavior shown by Sergeant Kue. Kue has been placed on administrative duty and taken off of his patrol assignment." Interim Chief White said he wants to understand why some of Kue's sustained misconduct, including a complaint that confirmed he used a racist slur toward a citizen, was later dismissed without a reason documented. He said since he joined the force, Kue has been accused repeatedly of excessive force, hostile and racist language, and harassing people of color who say their biggest crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The average uniformed officer in Detroit has received just over 8 citizen complaints, according to internal data provided by the Detroit Police Department. Some will go their entire career without receiving one. 7 Action News could not find any officer who has racked up as many complaints as quickly as Sergeant Kue. More striking than the number of complaints is the racial makeup of those lodging them. You know, it's just sad that had this news station not done this report, Sergeant Stephen Kue would have been going on his business, continued to be sued by people, continually harassing people of color. You would think that the judge would be like, hold up, why is this one officer repeatedly being sued? It's just a pattern of dropping the ball as well. This is a pattern of dropping the ball when it comes to police officers. It's really sad though. It sounds like Interim Chief White has stepped in a pile of shit in Detroit, is what it sounds like. And I hope they do move to dismiss him from the force altogether. That would be one less police gang member out on the street. And sadly, I think the citizens of Detroit would be a lot safer with Sergeant Kue off the force. And that's sad to say. This man was there to protect and serve. He's done nothing but harass and break every law known to man. It's just terrible. There's no telling what all he has gotten away with that people didn't file complaints about. Because there are a lot of people that are scared to file complaints against the police department. For fear of retaliation, especially in a small town. So there's just no telling what's out there in the woodwork that didn't get filed. I just had to bring this to the channel because I have never heard a story like this on a police officer. So I know the videos were a little bit long that I showed, but man, they were so worth it. I'm going to keep following to see what happens with Sergeant Kue and his 12 years of service with the Detroit Police Department. And hopefully, Interim Chief White will make the right decision and terminate him. And I'm going to end the story on that note. Thanks for watching, guys.